Hi,
How
how are
are
you?
you? Good, you. So today Montreal Rocks has the pleasure of speaking with Clerel, a Montreal-based artist from Cameroon, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to read you a quote here that describes you a little bit. It says, if you've ever enjoyed laying in a hammock on a hot and sunny beach while a gentle breeze blew into your face as you took small sips of a mojito, then Clerel is your man. So did you ever read
Wow.
that?
That's quite the that is quite the compliment.
So I had seen you opening up for Mavis Staples a few years back at the Rialto.
That was a fun show. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, thank you. No, that was I always it's something that I'm always grateful that it does for other people if it can help them kind of, as you described, take a bit of a mental vacation. I know for me, it's definitely what singing started out being initially, and that's I guess why I ended up doing as much as I did is because it really was that place to for me that little escape. But no, wow, thank you. That's, it's always to know that like other people can also perceive it that way. You just feel very fortunate.
I don't usually read my own quotes, but I was trying to
Well,
look you up and try to say not to repeat the same stuff that I've seen
hey man, the
people talk
truth, the
about.
truth is the truth. So I mean, or at least if it's perceived as the truth. So honestly, thank you. And I mean, I'm not gonna be the one that you quoted that.
So you're from Cameroon, right? But how long have you been in Montreal?
Well, the latest stretch, I guess it's 8 years.
Oh, 8 years.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
moved here after college.
Okay, so you went to college in chemistry, but then you came here to do music?
Yeah, I mean, it was initially within the context of like a family immigration.
Uh,
And so initially the idea was that because as a foreigner studying in the United States, you had only so many days to remain in the country after you graduated, and
oh,
within that time, you had to have found a job within your field of study. And so I guess Montreal was very appealing at the time because, as a permanent resident here, you're a bit more free in your choices of a career. So of course, yes, uh, definitely, I don't know if I would have been able to like go into a career in music had I stayed in the United States. So
okay.
yeah, so but I did other jobs like after in a few years after I moved here, but I guess music was always present and eventually kind of grew in importance in my day-to-day life.
So you did music as kind of a hobby while you were in college, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's actually college is where I learned to play the guitar
Mhm.
initially, and just being able to have, sometimes maybe there's things that just feel very, very hard, like difficult to understand. Some people it's math or science or like, or maybe tarot cards or whatever. There's all kinds of things. But when you're able to kind of gain, even if it's just like a basic and very general layer of understanding, it's very encouraging and makes you want to continue learning about it. And so for me, learning those those chords on the guitar
Mhm.
was really, it was like, oh wow, okay, you can make a harmonious sound with this instrument, and there are songs that don't require you to play anything more than like a couple chords, sometimes even one. So that was just an entryway. I had been singing since I was a child, so it was just a perfect marriage. And yes, and I guess when I started doing it, it was very much like you said, a hobby. It was just something that I enjoyed doing, something that gave a different color to my life as a chemistry student. And but singing had really been around me for all of my life at that point. And I guess yeah, I just never went to a period where I wasn't somehow doing it, whether it was for myself or like for others.
So you sang as a child, like at school, like or in a choir or a church?
At school, in church too. I wasn't part of a choir, but sometimes in some churches, you maybe have a choir that would lead the song, but obviously those hymnals are known by everyone, so everybody joins in, and then it's a nice, beautiful chorus of
Yeah.
harmonies, different voices coming in. So the church is really where I fell in love with harmony, and in school too, because in Cameroon, I guess here too they have this thing called assembly, so it's kind of a similar thing,
Mhm.
except you kind of like lined up like soldiers, and then you kind of made to sing all these songs.
Okay.
It's like a
Okay.
way to kind of warm you up in the morning before you start your classes. So
Oh,
that
okay.
was pretty much all of my like elementary school experience.
Okay. Do you obviously you speak French, but do you speak many other languages or English, French, and
Mostly English, French. I mean, I picked up a bit of Spanish in in high school, and we also have, I'm from the Bamileke people in Cameroon, and specifically the Bangwa region,
Mm,
and I guess so the language will be Bangwa. It's not a language that was very commonly used. I mean, that I used commonly as a kid, but growing up around it, you learn to kind of recognize a few like instructions and things like that. So that would be the other language. But obviously, I guess when you speak French or English,
yeah,
anything like Spanish and Italian,
yeah,
to an extent maybe German, is going to have, you can pick out a few things. And that's one thing that I like, because it's so interesting, the power of language to just, it colors meaning in a real way, even like between English and French, because I grew up in a predominantly French environment, from
absolutely.
the media that I was consuming to like what was used at home. And so to kind of be able to contrast that with my experience later living in the United States, college where it was all in English and everyone around me mostly spoke English.
Right.
It's interesting because it comes with like a whole culture, like almost its own brain, right? Its own kind of like consciousness. And
Mhm.
yeah, and so I think it's very interesting to find out exactly what that represents in other places. It could be like in Portuguese or in a bunch of other languages. In Cameroon there are about 250 different
Yeah,
languages for
yeah.
each of the different kingdoms. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Does your brain think in English or French? Because I know you write songs in English and you have some French songs too, right?
Yes, yes.
So
Honestly, I mean, I wonder. I don't know if it thinks in any like if I think necessarily in language like that. But I feel like definitely like both are present, and there's
yeah,
some, because I guess having at this point lived quite a big part of my life in North America, there's definitely there's even some things that I find relatively easier to kind of visualize and conceptualize in English and others in
yeah,
French. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And I think going forward I definitely want to explore that. One really cool thing I guess about what I do, and coming up in this era of social networks, is just being able to realize that you really have the world at your fingertips in a way. And people from anywhere in the world can find something to connect with in anything that someone from any other part of the world has done, because of this thing called the internet and
I
social media.
know.
We're all connected. So I just like, it's just very exciting to me, the idea of really kind of like, it's almost like a way to connect, right? To connect with all these different
Yeah,
cultures and languages. And that's still a goal of mine. Obviously the pandemic has put a lot of a new how do you say
yeah.
that, like uh, a new spanner in the works. I don't know if that's the words, but like, anyways, so, but regardless, that's still to me one of the coolest part about music. In fact, when I moved to Montreal, that's also, I didn't really know anybody here when I came. And it was only after I started going out to open mics and playing that, that's, you come into a place and obviously, there's people there, nobody really knows you, everybody's minding their own business. But then maybe there's an open mic and maybe you sign up to play. And if you go up and you do something that people like, then people now, it's like, hey man, like what you did, what's your name, where you
Yeah.
from, and
Well,
then
that takes guts though. I mean, that takes guts. I mean, like,
you mean to go out to like on stage to an open mic?
yeah, yeah,
Well, yeah, definitely. It does take a bit of like, you have to be able to accept you're probably going to feel nervous. I know I always do, but you just accept that, okay, it's normal, I feel this, and I'm just going to do my best, and hopefully
Mm.
out of what I do, something positive will end up translating. Hopefully it won't just be about the nervousness and about the fear, but also about what else I can share. And I mean, and the one thing I've noticed in general, at least in most of the places that I've been, it's a generally very friendly and supportive community. You have a lot of regulars, you have a lot of people that do all kinds of jobs and things like that. So it's just a place to kind of share around this passion of like music. So, I mean, even if you're not necessarily connecting with what's happening on stage as an audience member, it's still kind of supportive. So there's no there's no real negative energy. And I mean, I've witnessed definitely a few, like, I mean, sometimes it can be difficult, because as you say, it's like it's a big undertaking to kind of like put yourself like that in front of others, and if it's not something that you're either familiar with or that yeah, it can definitely, I mean, at any kind of level, I feel like that's something that can get in your head, and hopefully, because ultimately it should be more positive than negative. Because I mean, if it's just negative, then of course you wouldn't want to do that. You don't want to have that experience. So yeah, but for me, it definitely was the positivity of the experience was a big kind of like encouragement and kind of wanting to continue to do it.
I've realized like music is vibration and energy is vibration, and what you're putting out, people feel it. And if you're feeling positive or good about something and you're putting it out there and people are feeling it and sending it back to you. So it's like this whole
virtuous circle.
Yeah. I'm curious as to, I did see you on Stephen Colbert, and I'm a really big fan of Stephen Colbert. And I was always curious, like, how did you land that gig? Like, do you have a really good manager, or like,
no.
because that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I say no, not that I don't have a good manager, but I hadn't, at the time we booked it, we hadn't really yet, officially started working together. But the way it happened is very simple. It basically, one of the production assistants on the show, right? You have different people that are part of programming and everything. I guess had a friend that had one of my EPs, and that played it for her. I mean, yeah, and I guess she liked it enough, and they were doing this series, the Play at Home series, and so she reached out, and that was it. Yeah, it was all like yeah, it was all kind of sudden.
Well, considering 2020 was a rough year for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You had some pretty cool things happen to you during that time.
Honestly, yeah. And I'm very, very grateful for that, because it's true. It wasn't that, I mean, that year had already looked so like different and obviously unexpected. And to have something like that happen, I mean, I think it definitely even took some time within the turmoil that was happening to kind of process it and really kind of see, oh, wow, that's really, that's a cool thing to have done, at the point that I was in my journey. And yeah, I'm just grateful to have had that experience, and I look forward to doing that again live.
Have they invited you to New York to actually live?
No, but I'm looking forward to doing it again live at some point.
Cool.
I'm just putting it out there.
Why not? I mean, you never know what's possible. So you do some, I was listening to some of your stuff. You did some collaborations with
Miller Time or Salem?
Yes, Miller. I was going to say Miller Time, but that's like a beer commercial. It's spelled differently. Miller Time, like the herb.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is he Canadian, or how did you were saying?
Well, yeah, he is Canadian, and we connected in the Montreal scene. He's so you may have heard of the Cypher, the Urban Science Cypher happening in town.
Yes.
Happened. I guess they kind of on hiatus now, but it's a big kind of mecca of like cool musicians and cool instrumentalists, singers, MCs in town, and they used to have a weekly jam that I would often attend, and I think he is part of the collective that puts it on. So I think that's where that's one of the places we connected for the first time, and then definitely Miller Time says I guess like the foundation of his artistic personality is between hip hop, jazz, and I think R&B. And obviously because of that, there's quite a bit of like commonality in terms of like influences and music that we like and whatnot. So when he invited me, when he was recording that song, when he invited me to take part in it, I was very excited to be
Mm.
a part of it. And we were working with a producer. His name is Chris Vincent, and he's a part of the Busty and the Bass group.
Oh,
And yeah, and you also have Cloves, who's another like Montreal musician who's also doing background vocal, Wayne Tennant. So it was just a good day in the studio, just vibing with a lot of cool people. And yeah, and so and I think that was my first time collaborating with a rapper as well. So that was nice. That was a nice first.
do you have like a dream collab? Like if somebody granted you like a wish and said you can work with anybody you want, who would you want to work with?
Wow,
Anybody.
that's
Could be
me.
living or dead.
Could be living or dead. That's like even more complicated.
If we go dead, you're gonna go back to Motown like
Yeah. Oh man,
Otis.
I mean, obviously, those folks, yes, like those are like people, or like even working with those. Leon Ware is one I feel like I would have really enjoyed working with. Leon Ware is, I guess, one of the things. He's like well known in the not just the R&B community, but one of the projects he's well remembered for is producing and writing the "I Want You" album from Marvin Gaye.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard it, but if you haven't, I mean, it's
Yes.
the most sensual,
Wow.
pleasing experience. Is beautiful. But I just love the way he's like musical mind, like how he created the songs, how he put them together. Even listening to him talk about how that happens, I feel like that would have been like an exciting collaboration. Unfortunately, he has passed on as a few years ago, but I guess he's still teaching me from like. And all those artists are teaching us from their works. But I guess if I had to also mention somebody living, I don't know, man. I mean, I guess like we were just talking about collaborating with a rapper, and like a rapper that I came across recently and that I realized I really, really, and whose work I really fell in love with is Little Sims, like the British rapper. I don't know if you've heard of her. But I mean,
Yes, I have
right?
actually. Yes.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So she's definitely she put out an album last year called "Sometimes I Might Be an Introvert," and I came across it towards the end of the year, and it was beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
I just really dug the universe of it, the vibe and the spirit, the kind of like drive behind it.
Mm.
Yeah, so I guess today that's what my answer to that question. But again, yeah, I think that's what's cool about collaboration. In general, I like collaborating with people that like, that can really help, take
Push
something.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
push
exactly. Pushing
something
it in
different.
a direction that like that you may not expect, but that you can,
Right.
that you can see, oh wow, this is where, where you really feel like you stand out. So yeah, and I have definitely been able to have collaborations like that too. So I'm just, hopefully I'll be able to continue building on that.
Mm. You give me a bit of a Leon Bridges vibe too. Do you like Leon Bridges?
Oh, I love Leon Bridges. I
Yeah.
mean, right from that first song, like
River?
Coming
River?
Home.
Oh,
Oh,
come.
River. Yeah, well, there's that exactly. There was those two, and and he even has one called Better Man, I think, on that same album.
Yeah.
There were there's quite a few tracks on that first album, and I mean, and also just the way, because I remember, I know that like even at the time he was coming out with that first album, with those obviously very clear kind of school influences, he was mentioning other influences he had in the R&B world, like Genuine and Usher and all of that,
Right.
and different things. I love what he's been doing with Krang Bin as well lately.
Yes, they're
Like
so good.
even the whole stretch of how musically he has
Texas
been.
Sun. Did you hear
Yeah,
Texas Sun?
Texas
Nice.
Sun. I love that one. There's another one I was listening to recently. The one where they're all playing in a field.
Oh, is it something about a cow?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's just a fun, cool universe. So
Oh,
like, yeah. So that's one. That's somebody I really, 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 really admire, and whose work I really admire and who I really respect. And I know obviously because there's a similar kind of like drawing from those
mhm.
like 60s, 50s, 60s sources.
And his style too. And I noticed because like, okay, Leon has very retro style in his clothing as well and
Mhm,
his whole vibe.
mhm.
But
He's
you,
from Texas, right? He's like from
yeah, yeah,
he's from
yeah.
the hotbed of it all. Yeah.
But I also saw you did an ad for Courvoisier for cognac.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so you've got a whole style thing going on yourself. Like how did
Yeah. Well,
like you were a chemistry student and then you're like You're like advertising like cognacs and like,
Hey man, today as an artist, you gotta be what the time calls for you to be,
no, but that's cool, man.
Yeah, no, and that's what's exciting. I was even thinking back to the question you just asked me in terms of
Mm,
like who I would like to collaborate with, and I guess to the point of what we were discussing a bit before
mm,
about beauty is universal in a way, right?
right.
So the way you would express it in the graphic, in design, in drawing,
Mhm.
in whatever, in architecture, it's the
Right.
same as you would in music. So I also feel like it could be interesting, really, to collaborate with creatives even in
Yes.
different disciplines and just kind of like yeah, just kind of yeah, basically see how like how we can unify the beauty language to create
Right. Yeah.
something else. And that's something, yeah, and that's one thing that's cool. I think today it's something that's even more common, I guess, as an artist. You're not just expected to just be and do this one unidimensional thing. And I
Right.
think that reflects better the reality of us as human beings. Yeah, yeah. So like all kinds of things, poets, um, yeah, yeah, like anybody that's involved in creating beauty, it's like any way that I guess I
Mm,
can contribute to that. I'm generally just into that, because it's cool when you're able to look back at something really nice and know that you were a part of building it.
okay, so talking about love, that
Mhm.
one kind of reminded me of, you do that whistling in the beginning. It reminded me a little of Otis Redding.
Well, that influence is never far. I mean, for me,
Yeah.
it was a visit to the Stax Museum. That kind of like
Right.
they kind of like started me down on this way. And
Mm,
yeah, I think I guess sometimes I'm thinking in terms of how to like create a certain universe, and yeah, sometimes it happens spontaneously. I think I learned to whistle early on because my dad was always whistling, so I like I picked it up. So it's something that's very that I enjoy doing too from time to time. And yeah, and sometimes, especially, I perform a lot solo with just my voice and guitar. So it's just nice sometimes to utilize something else since I don't have the harmonica like Bob Dylan.
yeah.
To add a little flair to it.
So I know it's February and Montreal is kind of still not fully opening, but do you have any shows coming up?
I do not in the province. So like
Oh,
the next ones are going to be in Saskatchewan,
oh,
early March.
okay.
And I think I also have BC dates towards the end of that same month. So it's
Okay.
cool because it's given me and like I guess the musicians I work with something to look forward
Mhm.
to kind of play for and prepare for and kind of it's always nice because I think those are going to be in front of an audience. So it's always nice to be able
Yeah,
to react with an audience. I think one highlight of last year for me was playing at the Jazz Fest festival because
yeah,
you're really going from almost none of that kind of like interaction with like a real audience, like
yeah.
really that on a big scale. That was really fun. And so yeah, we want to continue representing that well and still stretching out, and because I feel like I'm always finding new things every time to kind of like adjust and modify based on who you're playing with, how many people there are. There's so many. It's like an interesting puzzle to try and solve. It's like what's a really impactful and satisfying way to kind of like put this musical message across.
Mm. Are you working on any new music or?
Oh, all the time. But
Yeah.
yes, specifically this year, yes, I collaborated with a few people. There's a rapper whose name is LT's, who I've worked with. There's Corneille, a musician who I connected with last year during the Festival Nuit d'Afrique
Okay.
that he was the spokesperson for. And yeah, so those are some of the people. And of course, with my other project, Only the Righteous Do. So it's been nice. I feel like I'm getting back into a more of a rhythm. Oh, and also I mentioned Basti and the bass earlier. They also, we also kind of like spend some time in the studio. And sometimes, you just get together and try and see what can happen. And sometimes there's some cool things that happen. So I'm looking forward to like sharing more on that as the time comes.
I like the combination of like your sound with rap. It really like it works well.
No, well, thank you.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's I didn't really know. It's one thing is that like that I had to try just to see exactly what it was like, and yeah, and I mean it was since Max kind of had a pretty good idea of what he wanted for that, so it was cool to just be able to like help in whatever I could to kind
Mm.
of support that vision and just yeah, yeah. At the end of the day, if everybody's happy, then it's a good indication.
Yeah. So you've got a couple of Canadian dates coming up in the next few months, and then it's too early to tell for the summer, like any Jazz Fest stuff, or we.
Yeah, no, we haven't really. I mean, I haven't had any communication with Jazzers. I don't
No?
know if they're
Oh,
working in, but yeah. So there were a few other things that had sort of like been a book that ended up being pushed a bit forward. So we're still waiting to kind of know of a confirmation in terms of like what's that's going to look like.
mhm.
But hopefully, hopefully we're in a place now when it's something that can actually be planned for. So yeah, I'm sure like that there'll be updates on that eventually. But I mean, I'm grateful at all to even, have that, um, to even have that opportunity, because I know that the reality for a lot of people, obviously, I know a lot as, I've read a lot of things lately about, the state of mind in the entertainment industry. And so, so it's nice to be able to have this opportunity to work for myself and to, to help some other people work as well.
What do you mean by the state of mind? Do you mean like people are discouraged or?
I've been reading, yeah, a few like testimonies from people feeling in general, yeah, yeah, absolutely, obviously, because you suddenly go from like your life being, either playing shows or running shows and managing and mixing and producing shows to none of that happening. So it's a pretty radical transition to make. And so, like, of course, I mean, I know even for me, there was definitely a stretch of time when I wasn't really, it was harder, I guess, than usual to even like do anything musical with the knowledge that, that it's not something that you're not going to be able to do anytime soon, but thankfully, I mean, eventually, with because there's so much good music out there, eventually, of course, you keep falling in love with it and it keeps drawing you back. But also, I have had opportunities still to play regardless. So yeah, yeah, and I'm hoping that like I guess the current transition in the measures means that eventually we can get to a place where people are able to do that, because obviously, I mean, maybe music may not be considered as essential for good reason, as some other industries, but the value I think it brings to the world and entertainment in general brings to us as people is undeniable. So, yeah, so hopefully the times will reflect that as well.
You know, just a thought. During the pandemic, the last 2 years, what I realized, the things that gave me the most happiness in these past 2 years are the things that gave me the most happiness as a young adult, like as a teenager, and that was music and books. So I found myself ordering a
All of those, yeah,
yeah, there's more. There's like boxes, but
that is
I
a crazy
I'm giving them
collection.
away because I have no space. But
Man,
on,
you must never get bored.
well, I started just ordering music and ordering books online, and it's the thing that gave me the most happiness when I was a kid, and it's
Yeah,
still after all these years, it's the thing
that's
that
what
gives
it
me
comes
the most
back to.
happiness,
Yeah,
and
no,
they are
it is.
essential. Books and music are definitely essential.
So, so yeah, so like yeah, so definitely it's nice that like and I mean obviously the people are aware of that, and I guess it's nice for institutions to kind of keep that in mind as well in the decision
Mhm.
making. Because yeah, definitely, as with many other sectors, it's a sector that has been that has been hit pretty
I
hard.
know. I speak to a lot of artists and they figure like, oh, I might as well just, go work in a grocery store because I got to make money and, singing
Yeah,
isn't considered important or whatnot. But you know what?
yeah.
Everyone at the end of the day, they need the soothing voice or a song or,
Oh, we all do. Or
we
like, the hard rock song to just be able to like lose themselves to.
do. Right. Or now with
Although
a with a
absolutely.
snowstorm, a nice mellow song, a tropical song. But yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I'm glad to be able to be a part of like
Mhm.
offering that, and
Right.
yeah. I'm just grateful, and I try to kind of like I understand that it's a big kind of it's a responsibility, in a way. It's like
Yeah.
it's calling, so like you do want to make sure that you always put yourself in the best position to do it well, and to do it professionally. So that's all I'm doing.
Well, you're putting your chemistry degree to work because it's all,
Well, yeah, I mean, there's something about, there was something cool about studying science, or like, I guess chemistry has been, I guess it's the same thing as with the guitar, is that sometimes, and to this day, right, there's a lot of things that I feel are just like very hard to understand, that I hear a lot of people talk about, things like that. And sometimes it's just nice to know that, this is your brain on music. Who is that again? Like,
it's Daniel Levitin. The,
okay. I have heard about this book, but I don't know. I haven't read it. How is it?
he was a professor at McGill, and you can go
Okay.
on YouTube. He did a whole series with musicians on PBS. Anyway,
Wow.
yeah. Sorry to
Mm.
interrupt you. Go ahead.
Not at all. No, hey man.
Mm,
I'm all about book related interruptions.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no. It's but that's it though. It's like there's so much to. It's like you start from a place of not understanding and not knowing, and you just start from general basic principles, and you just gradually increase the complexity. Then you can get a certain understanding, a useful understanding of certain things. Something that you can use to kind of like make something about your own life better. And that's definitely something that I feel you know studying science has helped me with. It's like even if I start from a place of not getting it, not understanding it, even with guitar, it's like okay, let's try from something simple, let's try and figure out how it plays out into, and you find out that's literally how everything is just like something very, very simple applied in like a lot of way, like in a big way that makes it look complex, but it's like it starts
Once
from something simple.
once you get the formula, then it's easy.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so it's for me, that's part of what makes it exciting. It's also you never know what you're going to learn that's gonna kind of like, I guess, get you closer to a certain sense of like formula, a certain sense of like, okay, I'm understanding how this is happening. This applies to songwriting, this applies to singing too, in a way. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay, last question. When you told your parents you weren't going to use your chemistry degree and you were going to be a singer, I wanted to hear that conversation.
Well, I mean, I guess maybe I was lucky because like there was never, I mean, it wasn't really ever a conversation of, I know you guys paid untold amounts of money for this degree in America, and now I'm not gonna go and use it. In fact, because when I moved here to Canada, one of the places I worked at was actually a software company that dealt with clients that were in the field of chemistry. And I come from a family. My dad worked. He's a software engineer, as are my siblings. So, I mean, I guess we were always brought up around computers, and there was always, I guess, a natural curiosity when it came time for websites and things like that. So, I guess that IT background was very compatible with my chemistry background, and I actually got to, like, it actually did get me employed at one point. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, I was doing, it was kind of a Batman thing. So like, by day, my Bruce Wayne personality was working, in this IT job. And then by night, I was traipsing the bars and like the open mic, or any place that would like kind of, invite me to play. And I guess what happened is that eventually, the gigs got more and more interesting. And I guess at one point I just had to make the reflection because it was relatively hard to really do both. I know some people are able to do that admirably well. I admire that, but it was difficult, So I guess it was a conversation with myself more so of like, okay, in 5 years, what do I think I will regret more not doing if I don't do it? And essentially that's why I was like, you know what? I don't have any kids. I'm not married. I don't have any kind of like, I mean, if this turns out to be an absolute like disaster, I'll just stomach it. and then I just decided to go. And yeah, because I mean, I figured if people do like it, if there's no, I also didn't have the kind of experience where maybe some people will have an experience where somebody told them, you know, like, you should never do this or you'll never be this, you know. I was blessed with like an extremely supportive family, and friends too, you know, and so it's really cool, you know. To this day, even like the friends that I went to school in high school with, it's like to hear them, you know, tell me, oh, you know, well, I listened to this song, like, good job, you know. It's like, I didn't, honestly, that's like an unintended side effect. I didn't really expect that to even turn out like that, but then it's like you have this appreciation, this homegrown appreciation on top of that, and yeah, it just makes you want, okay, you know, let me go out and like really, really do my best and be my best. And yeah, and I mean, and even if occasionally you come across people that don't like what you do like that, then it's fine, because ultimately you're doing it for the people that like it. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. You can't make everybody happy.
Oh no, thankfully.
Well, it was really lovely speaking with you, Clerel, and thank you
Likewise,
for your time.
thanks for the
And
invitation.
thank you. And I'm looking forward to hearing new music.
I
And
will make sure you'll get the in advance here whenever
you.
when it's interesting.
And I'm fingers crossed that this summer we'll see you performing live in Montreal.
Thank you so much.
All
Thank you.
right. Okay. Take care. Thank you.